"I'm closing the shop," said 58-year-old Eddie Kowalski, setting down his wrench on the workbench. His repair shop had stood in the same spot for 30 years, but now customers preferred the modern service centers. Nobody wants old-school mechanics anymore. At that moment, a young engineer walked through the door and froze while looking at the engine Eddie had just modified. "Sir, did you do this engine modification? This design could be used at NASA." What they didn't know was that within minutes, this question would change the small town forever, and Eddie Kowalski's hidden past would shock everyone. But before we dive into this incredible story, tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and if you've ever witnessed something like this, share your experiences below. If you want to be the first to hear about more inspiring stories like this one, subscribe and hit the notification bell. The town Millfield, Pennsylvania, population 4,500, is a small industrial town nestled in the Rust Belt. Once thriving with steel factories and automotive industry, the last 20 years saw major corporations close one by one. Main Street is half filled with empty storefronts, for rent signs, and old buildings that remember better days. At the north end of town, beside the main highway, stands a faded blue building with Kowalski Auto Repair painted in block letters. The front yard is less lawn than it is spare parts, old engine blocks, and metallic scraps that Eddie calls his someday useful collection. Next to the building sits a 1985 blue Chevrolet pickup, Eddie's daily driver. Inside, the shop is like a time capsule from the 90s. In the center stands an old hydraulic lift, a metal workbench in the corner with tools arranged in perfect order. Everything is old but meticulously organized. The smell hits you immediately. Motor oil, grease, metal shavings, and that indefinable scent of honest work. The concrete floor is stained with decades of automotive fluids, but swept clean every evening. A small radio in the corner plays classic rock from the same station Eddie's listened to for 20 years. The mechanic, Edward Eddie Kowalski, is 58 years old, second-generation Polish-American. Medium height, shoulders broadened by decades of physical work, hands permanently stained with motor oil and grease that never completely washes clean. His hair has turned silver gray, his face lined with wrinkles, but his eyes remain sharp and intelligent. He wears the same blue coveralls every day, with Eddie embroidered on the chest. Eddie speaks slowly and thoughtfully. He doesn't chat much with customers, but his technical questions are always precise. He can diagnose what's wrong with a car just by listening to its engine. Customers call him the listening mechanic because he can hear problems others miss. For 30 years, he's opened his shop at exactly 7 a.m. every morning. He drinks his coffee, turns on the radio, always the same station, classic rock, then begins the day's first job. He eats lunch at the shop, usually a sandwich his mother made. At 6 p.m., he closes up and goes home to his mother's house, where they've lived together for 30 years. Eddie never married, has no children. His social life is practically non-existent. Weekends find him at the shop, working on personal projects. The town knows him as a good but quiet man. He doesn't discuss politics, doesn't engage in gossip, just does his work and goes home. His customers are mainly people with older cars. Those with newer vehicles go to the big service centers in the city. Eddie's prices are reasonable, but his service philosophy is old school. It takes time, but he does the job perfectly. It's not finished until it's done right, he always says. But there's something different about Eddie's posture, something that sets him apart from other men his age. His back remains straight as a board, his shoulders square, his walk purposeful, even when crossing the small shop. When he speaks, it's with measured cadence, choosing words carefully, never wasting breath on unnecessary chatter. His eyes, pale blue and alert, have a quality suggesting they've seen more than most, though he's never offered details about what that might be. The decline. The last 5 years brought dramatic changes to Millfield's automotive industry. Outside town, Auto Mall opened, a massive complex housing Honda, Toyota, and Chevrolet dealerships. Each has its own service center, computerized diagnostic systems, specialist technicians, fast service guarantees. Younger customers stopped coming to Eddie. Modern cars have computer-controlled systems that Eddie's old tools can't handle. His customer base is aging and shrinking. Daily customer count dropped from 8 to 10 to 3 to 4. Eddie tried to modernize. He took out a loan for computerized diagnostic equipment, but struggled to learn how to use it. He considered hiring a young technician, but his income couldn't support the salary. Advertising, social media, modern marketing, all felt foreign to him. Auto Mall's advantages were clear: fast service, warranties, guaranteed parts, clean waiting areas, free coffee. Eddie's shop offered none of these. He worked old school, took his time, but delivered quality work. The financial situation grew increasingly difficult. Rent, electricity, equipment maintenance, his income barely covered expenses. He didn't want to burden his mother, but options were running out. The broader economic forces accelerated Millfield's transformation. The shopping complex didn't just hurt his business, it pulled customers from every Main Street establishment. The old hardware store couldn't compete with big box retailers. The family-owned clothing shop couldn't match chain store selection and prices. One by one, businesses that had anchored downtown Millfield for generations began closing permanently. The final day. That Tuesday morning, Eddie woke earlier than usual. At breakfast he told his mother, "I'm thinking about closing the business, Ma." 78-year-old Barbara was surprised. "Eddie, you love this work." "I do love it, but nobody wants me anymore. They all go to those shiny new places. You do better work than they do." "Good work isn't enough anymore, Ma. They want fast service, fancy places, technology." When Eddie arrived at the shop, a customer was waiting, 73-year-old Harold Kowalski. No relation, just the same surname. He owns a 1997 Buick that Eddie has been maintaining for 15 years. "Morning, Eddie." Engine's making a strange sound. Eddie test drove Harold's car. The sound was subtle but clear to his experienced ear. Valve adjustment was off. An hour's work, but without proper diagnosis, the engine could suffer serious damage. "Valve adjustment, Harold. I can fix it, but it'll take 3 to 4 hours. You know best, Eddie. I trust you." While Eddie worked, Harold waited and chatted. "Eddie, how long have you been doing this work?" 30 years. "Ever think about doing something else?" Eddie paused. "Actually, before I started this, I did other things." "Like what?" "Engineering. Long story." Harold was curious, but Eddie didn't elaborate. When the job was finished, Harold left satisfied, as always. The engineer. During lunch hours, when Eddie was alone, he retreated to the small office behind the shop. Here lay a secret no one knew. A metal cabinet containing old files, blueprints, calculators, an MIT diploma. Eddie really was an engineer. 1985 graduate of MIT with a degree in aeronautical engineering. His thesis was titled Rocket Engine Fuel Injection System Optimization. After graduation, he started work at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. He worked at NASA for 5 years. The Challenger disaster, space shuttle programs, Mars exploration projects. He was involved in all of them. He designed rocket engines, developed fuel systems. A brilliant career awaited him. In 1990, his father had a heart attack. Eddie took leave and came to Millfield. His father recovered, but his mother needed help. "I'll stay a month or two, then go back," he told himself. But his father fell ill again 6 months later. Eddie took extended leave from NASA. This time his father didn't recover. Cancer diagnosis. Eddie decided to stay with his family. In 1992, his father died. During the grieving process, Eddie postponed returning to NASA. His mother fell into depression and couldn't be left alone. Eddie would stay in town temporarily. He didn't know how permanent temporary could become. Money was needed. His NASA salary had stopped. An engineering degree was useless in a small town. But he'd always been interested in cars, and at NASA he'd maintained the vehicles himself. The owner of the corner repair shop was retiring. "I'll work a few years, save money, then return to NASA," he thought. 30 years passed. Secret projects. Eddie didn't view mechanics as just a livelihood. His engineering background gave him a different perspective. While repairing customers' vehicles, he tried to improve their systems. He modified fuel-hungry engines in older cars, increasing their efficiency. He applied thermal dynamic principles learned at NASA to cooling systems. He performed fluid dynamics calculations on exhaust systems. Customers noticed. Cars fixed by Eddie use less fuel. Engines sound smoother. But Eddie didn't use these improvements as marketing tools. He quietly did his work. Behind the shop, he had a secret workshop. Here he worked on personal projects, trying to apply rocket engine principles to automobile engines, fuel injection systems, combustion chamber optimization, thermal management. He'd developed prototype engines, systems that could produce 40% more power with the same fuel. But he shared these with no one. Who would listen, he thought. At home, he had a computer, old but powerful. Nights found him making CAD drawings, checking calculations. He followed engineering journals, reading about latest developments. Occasionally, old NASA colleagues called. "Eddie, what are you doing?" "Still in Millfield." He told them family business. No one understood the transition from engineering to mechanics. In his secret workshop, Eddie had created something remarkable. Using principles from rocket propulsion, he'd designed automotive engines with unprecedented efficiency. His 1985 Chevrolet pickup, modified with his technology, achieved fuel economy that rivaled modern hybrid vehicles. But the world remained unaware of his innovations. The MIT engineer. Tuesday afternoon brought a visitor who would change Eddie's life, a 28-year-old woman, professionally dressed, carrying a laptop bag. Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Sarah Chen from MIT. My car has engine problems, and locals recommended you. Sure, what's your problem? Sarah owned a 2015 Honda Civic with engine vibration issues. She'd taken it to several service centers, but none could solve it. Computer diagnostics show normal, but there's clearly a problem. Eddie listened to the car. To his experienced ear, it was obvious. One engine mount had loosened, creating harmonic vibration, the kind of thing service centers might miss. Engine mounts. One is loose, vibration frequency is affecting the others. Yes, that's exactly how it feels. How did you diagnose it so quickly? Experience. Eddie began work, but this wasn't ordinary repair. While changing engine mounts, he tried to improve the system's overall balance, a habit from previous repairs. Sarah watched, studying Eddie's methodology. This approach is very systematic. Do you have engineering training? Eddie paused. Some, just some. This is a very sophisticated approach. Eddie didn't answer, but Sarah was intrigued. She began examining Eddie's workbench. Tools arranged precisely, calculator, technical books. Then she noticed something, an open notebook on the workbench. Inside were technical drawings, mathematical calculations, engine diagrams. These weren't ordinary mechanics notes. Are these drawings yours? Eddie grew nervous. Yes, hobby. Sarah examined the drawings. Thermal dynamics calculations, flow analysis, combustion chamber geometry, MIT engineering level work. This isn't a hobby. This is professional level engineering. Eddie remained silent, focusing on the engine mount replacement. Mr. Kowalski, you haven't told me who you really are. The truth. Under Sarah's persistence, Eddie could no longer hide. MIT graduate, 1985, aeronautical engineering. Sarah's eyes widened. MIT. I'm at MIT too, research associate in mechanical engineering. Why are you here? Eddie briefly explained. NASA, family, staying situation. Sarah listened, her amazement growing. You worked at NASA. Which projects? Jet Propulsion Lab. Rocket engines, fuel systems. I can't believe it. You're a real rocket engineer. Eddie felt embarrassed. Used to be. Now I'm just a mechanic. You're not just a mechanic. Can I see those drawings again? Eddie reluctantly showed his notebook. Sarah flipped through pages, incredulous. These designs are incredible. This engine modification, theoretically, could provide 35% efficiency improvement. Have you tested it? Built a prototype. It works. It works. You mean actual 35% improvement? A bit more. Around 38%. Sarah grew excited. This technology would be revolutionary. A major breakthrough for the automotive industry. Nobody would be interested. I'm just a mechanic. No, you're not. You're an engineer hiding your genius. This technology could change the world. The discovery. Sarah convinced Eddie to show her his workshop. Eddie hesitated but finally opened the secret back section. Sarah was mesmerized by what she saw. Prototype engines, test setups, computer simulations, a complete research laboratory. This engine, your own design. I adapted rocket engine principles from NASA. Combustion chamber geometry, fuel injection angles, cooling systems. Does it work? Of course. I use it in my Chevrolet pickup, 1985 model, but fuel consumption beats new cars. Sarah requested a test. Eddie reluctantly agreed. They started the pickup, conducted fuel consumption tests. The result was incredible. The 1985 pickup consumed 6 liters per 100 kilometers. Normally, this engine should consume 12 to 13 liters. This is impossible, but it's real. Eddie showed blueprints, calculations, test results. Sarah examined everything. Eddie, don't you realize, this technology is worth billions. Automotive companies would give everything for this. Who cares? I'm an old mechanic in a small town. No, you have technology that could solve environmental problems, could cut carbon emissions in half. The persuasion. Sarah invited Eddie to MIT. Come meet my research team. Let's find funding for this technology. Eddie hesitated. Sarah, I haven't left here in 30 years. I have my mother, the business. Eddie, your mother would watch with pride. You could change the world. Nobody at MIT would believe an old mechanic. At MIT, everyone believes evidence. And your evidence is very strong. While Sarah tried to convince Eddie, an unexpected customer arrived. Harold had returned. Eddie, the car runs perfectly. Never been this quiet. What did you do? Eddie felt embarrassed. Just repair, Harold. Sarah interrupted. Do you realize? Eddie didn't just repair the engine. He improved it. Harold was surprised. Improved. Eddie is an MIT graduate rocket engineer. He worked at NASA. Harold couldn't believe it. Eddie, you're a rocket engineer? Eddie nodded. Harold was shocked. Why didn't you tell us for 30 years? Who would care? Everyone would care, Eddie. You're the smartest person in this town and nobody knew. Word spreads. Harold excitedly spread the news through town. By evening, everyone knew. Eddie Kowalski was an MIT graduate who had worked at NASA as a rocket engineer. The next day, a line formed outside the repair shop. Not just customers, but curious townspeople. Eddie, are you really a rocket engineer? Why didn't you ever tell us? What did you do at NASA? Eddie was uncomfortable with all the attention. I just want to do my work. But the townspeople thought differently. The mayor came. Eddie, as a town, we apologize. For 30 years we had a genius living among us and didn't realize it. Mr. Mayor, I'm just a mechanic. No, Eddie, you're going to be this town's pride. The MIT visit. At Sarah's insistence, Eddie went to MIT. His mother said, "Go, son, it's time." Being on MIT campus after 25 years was emotional for Eddie. He'd been a student here once, now he was returning at 58. Sarah's research team welcomed Eddie. Professor Williams, the team leader, examined Eddie's work. "Mr. Kowalski, these designs are extraordinary. Why didn't you publish academically? I thought nobody would listen." "You were wrong. There's tremendous interest from the automotive industry for this technology." The team put Eddie's engine design under full examination. Computer simulations, materials analysis, performance testing. Result, Eddie's technology was theoretically perfect, practically applicable, commercially very valuable. The deal. 2 weeks later, representatives from General Motors came to MIT to evaluate Eddie's technology. "Mr. Kowalski, have you filed a patent application for this engine design?" "No, you should immediately. We want to make a licensing agreement for this technology." Eddie was surprised. "Licensing agreement? Yes, we would pay you royalties for every vehicle produced with this technology." Professor Williams explained, "Eddie, this is your technology. It's very valuable. Companies like GM will pay you to use it." When the figure was mentioned, Eddie couldn't believe it. $2 million initial payment, $500 royalty per vehicle. "Professor, what would I do with this money?" "We'd continue your research, Eddie. Set up a laboratory at MIT. Build a team." The return. When Eddie returned to Millfield, the town had completely changed. A sign reading MIT graduate rocket engineer hung outside his repair shop. The customer line extended beyond the door. Not just locals, but people from the city, even from out of state. Eddie's repair shop had become famous. TV stations wanted interviews. But what made Eddie happiest was seeing the pride in his mother's expression. "Mom, I'm sorry. 30 years were wasted." "No, son. 30 years were preparation time. Now your time has come. New beginning." Eddie now operates his repair shop part-time, 3 days a week at MIT, 3 days in Millfield. At MIT, Kowalski Propulsion Laboratory was established. A team researches Eddie's engine technologies. His Millfield repair shop became Advanced Automotive Research Center. University students come for internships. The town revitalized. Technology companies began opening representative offices. Job opportunities increased. Eddie's life completely changed, but his character remained the same. Still modest, hard-working, family-focused. One day he told Sarah, "25 years ago when I left NASA, I thought I'd made a mistake. Now I understand everything has its time." Legacy. Eddie's story didn't just change Millfield, it impacted the automotive industry. Thanks to his engine technology, cars consume less fuel, causing less environmental damage. He continues developing new technologies from his MIT laboratory, but every evening he returns to Millfield, to his mother. His repair shop remains open, no longer just a mechanic, but also a researcher. Yet to his customers, he's still Eddie, reliable, honest, modest mechanic. The townspeople now call him Professor Eddie, but he still wears the same blue coveralls, drives the same Chevrolet pickup. The abandoned lots near his shop have filled with new businesses. Young engineers have moved to town, drawn by the opportunity to work with the Millfield genius. The local high school now offers advanced engineering courses, inspired by Eddie's story. Sarah visits regularly, collaborating on new projects. She often tells Eddie, "You didn't just improve engines, you improved lives." Eddie's mother, now 83, sits proudly in the front row at every town ceremony honoring her son. She always says the same thing. "I always knew my Eddie was special. I just didn't know how special." The 1985 Chevrolet pickup still sits outside the shop, now famous as the first vehicle to use Kowalski technology. Car enthusiasts make pilgrimages to see it. Eddie still drives it daily, a reminder that innovation can come from the most unexpected places. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe and hit the notification bell to be the first to know about more inspiring content. And remember that wisdom comes in many forms, and the person you overlook today might be the hero you need tomorrow.